Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from where you're joining us today for this HP Software web event, Asset Manager, Chargeback, Total Cost of Ownership Reporting for Business Services. Thank you for joining us. My name is Mark Bradley, and I'll be your host today. This webinar is produced by is in the Vivid platform, and we're excited that Vivid has helped us get the word out to host this webinar today. And you're seeing a couple of hashtags, so if you're inclined and you're doing a little bit of social media, please feel free to use HP Discover CMS for the broader topic, or HP Discover Asset Manager. This is brought to you by HP. Thank you for HP. And again, I'm hosting. My name is Mark Bradley, Product Marketing Manager here at HP Software. And I have about 20 years of enterprise software experience. And I'm excited to be here today. I'm also joined by Mike Ranger, Senior Product Marketing Manager for Asset Manager, one of our industry luminaries. We'll let Mike do an introduction when he comes up to speak. A little bit of housekeeping. This is a live session. It's being recorded, and the recordings will be available to all Vivid members. During the session, we'll be glad to take some question and answer. You'll have a question and answer pane that you can go to, plug in your questions. We'll be monitoring them as the webinar unfolds. And we'll be able to toggle back and forth, and towards the end we'll go through some questions and answers, and hopefully we could get them all covered. And then in the event that we don't, we'll follow up with an email that has a list of questions with our response. All right, so let's get right to it. So there was a time when every household had its own water well, and there was a time where each house had its own. Went into the backyard, you dug up the well, you got your water, and then today, cities got involved, and municipalities got involved, and so now we have like a shared public utility, which gives us access to good, clean water. And then, like water from a tap in your kitchen, you can now turn it on and off quickly as needed, and you basically pay by the drink. And what we're seeing in the world of cloud and automation, we're seeing that there's a big transition. Most leaders today are looking for views for cost reduction, which is kind of a primary driver of cloud adoption. IT executives are starting to appreciate the transformative value of cloud, so they're looking for things like cost reduction, speed to adoption, new market entry, business process transformation. They're looking to improve alignment. And so as they're going through, asset manager and ITFM professionals, there's some key challenges that we're trying to address. The top three I have at the top here is this evidence of cost savings, shifting to use usage price by price, and then the compelling realistic business case. So as IT shops are now taken from what was traditionally on-premise implementations of software and hardware. Now they're looking to cloud-based solutions, and during this transition, there's the cost factor, and the question of, is it truly doing what we believe it'll do? Makes sense on the back of a napkin, but how do you actually get into it and understand your current costs coupled with your transition? And so there's a number of ways to prepare, and what we'd like to do is kind of bring out that opportunity and then walk through how asset management solves that problem. So the opportunity to maximize your investments of company funds and resources to make a difference. In addition, you're trying to communicate IT value through IT spend trends, baselines by business services, application, business units, and IT budget categories. So when you look at the graphic, what you're seeing is deliver business innovation growth. You're trying to cut the cost and manage the budgets well, all while presenting visibility, resource allocation, and investment of capital. So what does that look like? So a lot of IT budgets could look like this. This is just a very basic, you're looking at your total spend. You're seeing the new IT investments where you're trying to grow and innovate. You've got your operation and support, where you're kind of keeping the lights on. And then at the bottom there, you typically have this planning and strategy. Where do we need to go, out in front. And then over to the right, you kind of see this operational spend, kind of broken up into a pie chart. Obviously, mileage will vary. These numbers will vary by your shop, but just kind of gives you kind of a big picture of the things that we're looking at, the things that we're thinking about as we build these financial baselines. Another way to look at it, as we continue to evolve and look at things from a service perspective. And as we look from a service perspective, you go to a catalog, you request an item, there's this expectation. There's an expectation of when it's going to be delivered. Once it's delivered, how's it going to perform going forward? And so if you look into the consumer area, you see in expectations, IT service, and performance. Oops, go back once. And what the goal is to try and keep this happy medium. If you spend too much money on a service, everybody's happy, but it costs too much. If you pull back on investment and the service isn't working well, then you have highly dissatisfied customers. So the challenge is trying to keep it right inside the sweet spot where people are happy, services are being delivered, and we can move on to the next service, so to speak. The other challenge is just balancing demand and supply. So we talked a little bit about that. So here we have these, what we call demand management. You have IT demand drivers. You've got external market forces that are making you do things that you probably weren't ready for, or it continues to evolve in the market. You have internal business initiatives. You have regulatory and compliance, all feeding into the demand. And then at the same time, you're trying to figure out how we're going to cover this cost. We've got chargeback, cost allocation. We've got the services that we put in our catalog. We've got portfolio of initiatives that are going on. All these kind of fall into this demand bucket. And then as you're looking at this demand bucket, you're looking at quality and quantity, and where do I make these investments? And then that kind of feeds right into who's going to do the work. Full-time employees? Do we have the budget for it? And then the financial aspects of it. Is there IT cost controls, or strategy? Is it sustainable? Can we continue to do these improvements? And then what is discretionary? And should we cut it, or should we continue to invest in it? And then that kind of parlays into this new world that we're looking at where production and consumption of IT is changing radically. And it's all happening at the same rapid pace. Consumers, they have new consumption demands. Today you can sit in your living room with your device and be able to execute back office transactions, be able to do a number of things that in the old days required you to go to the office, sit at a desk, and sit through the terminal to make happen. So today we've got this mobility, and then on top of all that, you've got new architectures being developed in the marketplace, and then it's all kind of sitting on this cloud perspective. Public cloud, private cloud, traditional provisioning. There's a flurry of activity that's happening at a very rapid pace. And the challenge that you're trying to overcome is how do I capture that cost, and how do I show when I'm transitioning from my traditional into this cloud, am I really saving money? And are we really getting the best of both worlds? So as this particular slide begins to unfold, you see the consumers, and now what's happening is IT shops are changing to this broker concept. Instead of managing and maintaining internally, and every once in a while having an outside vendor taking care of pieces and parts of our portfolio, now we're sitting back and there's multiple things happening at the same time. And now we're starting to look at from a broker, integrate, and monitor. And so as we're transitioning from, the traditional cloud to private, managed, public, there's a variety of platforms to go. We're still trying to maintain our service level agreements, things like availability, security, performance, compliance, etc. And then also the system of engagements, the social media like Facebook and Google Apps and so on. So there's a flurry of activity that's happening. And what we want to do is kind of break it down a little bit, take an item out of the catalog, and kind of understand the differences that come together to give you either price and cost, two separate things. And so what we're doing here is we're just kind of showing a model that when we go to Amazon or you go to Azure or you go to HP Helon and you start to look at the server costs, storage costs, how are they getting that number? And how can I compare my current architecture and infrastructure and derive that number? And so this is what we're doing here is we're kind of showing you the various variables that come into place, things like depreciation, maintenance, labor, facility, and then as we derive that, we're creating this bill of IT, or in this case, we're showing you these monthly rates for server, storage, or looking at it from a complete roll-up to cost of a service. So we can answer the question that says, what is email costing us internally? What does payroll services cost us internally? And when we compare that to the market of Gmail or to Workforce, we've got a good combination. So how does that breakdown happen? This could be very typical in a lot of organizations. We still do it on spreadsheets. We still have the breakdown that shows us, by data center, whether it's in production, UAT, test, dev, and then what size machine is it, how much space is it taking. So there's a number of factors that kind of go into place that help us derive what our costs are. And so this is just your typical spreadsheet trying to give you the run rates, expense per servers, this combined, so that you know what you're budgeting for. And then you parlay that with what we call the object model of an IT service. And so you look at it from a logical perspective where you see, email services, and then you start to get into systems, which, email system are you using, and then as you start to tie together the logical and then the physical servers. And then within HP software, you could use something like application service modeling, which comes from UCMDB, where it kind of builds this for you, and then we marry that up with the financial. And here's kind of an example of how you tie it together. So you have your spreadsheet, you're looking, you see the numbers and the various cost factors coming together between the two. And then what Mike's going to talk more about as we go forward is how does the service costing and usage come into play, and what does that start to look like? And then as we go to the different lines of businesses that are consuming these services, we can give them a breakdown as to how did we get these numbers, and then how can we do better to either reduce or invest depending on the business strategy. And then that begins to tie into things like, as you start at the bottom, you have your raw data, you're looking at labor, internal, external, you're looking at infrastructure as a service where you're seeing things like computing, database, storage, etc. And then as you start to go up this, you start to see software as a service, and then you get into this business service. So it's kind of a way to take a look and see how it grows going forward. And then this is just another financial approach to, you take a look at you want to calculate a Linux server, and you look at things like what's my facility cost, power cost, security, and as I kind of roll this together, it kind of builds the model, and I can kind of see how it's coming together. And then this shows, okay, once I have all these services defined, and as I continue to go forward, what's my run rates look like, and then as I'm transitioning from on-prem into the cloud. These are all the things that I need to think about, the different allocation rules, the consumption volume, and then as I'm slowly doing the Deming cycle of improvements, I can kind of show the model as to how it comes together. And then this kind of builds out the approach where I have lots of systems in place today. And within each of these systems, all contributing, utilizing cost allocation engine, utilizing UCMDB, looking at our application service modeling to build these topologies, and then being able to show the showback, the budgeting, and the cost control. So as I prepare to hand this off to Mike, that was just kind of a baseline to prepare. So at this point, I think what I'll do is I'll transition to Mike, let Mike do his, begin on the financial management chargeback. Mike, are you with us?
I am. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. And as Mark mentioned earlier in the presentation, I am the product manager for HP Asset Management, which includes all the modules that are part of that solution. So I'm going to take this over and start talking about the financial management chargeback within asset management. First, what I'd like to do here is give you a quick overview of the asset management product and where this chargeback capability would reside. On this slide here, we have asset portfolio management, which is really the core module of Asset Manager. Then we have our contract management module, which allows us to bring in all our vendor contract supplier information into the solution. After that, we have software asset management. So now we're bringing in our, our entitlements and our inventory information. We're able to compute our compliance standing, our usage of the software titles that are deployed within our company. Then we move to our financial management module. This is the key here for our chargeback capabilities within HP Asset Management. So this allows us to do expenses, set budgets, do the chargeback, understand the total cost of ownership of your business services or solutions within your companies. Then after that, we have our procurement. So this will allow us to enable the automation of purchase orders, or we could tie into an external system to automate that as well too. But really for this session here, to understand, chargeback, we'll be focusing on more the financial management module and its capabilities. So at this time, Mark, I'd like to really ask a question to the audience with regards to how many of the attendees here are currently using the financial management module of asset management today.
Sure. So if you, hopefully each of you received the poll popped up on your screen. And like Mike said, if you're currently using the following financial module, yes, no, or it's part of our plans going forward. And then let's see if we, as I can see here, it looks like making some progress here. Folks are...
Good. Yeah, we're starting to see the needs for understanding total cost of ownership really start to increase within companies. So, yeah, we should see a good response to this.
Yeah, it looks like we have pretty good response rate. So let's go ahead and close that and take a look. So looks like what we're seeing is, again, are you using the financial module today? 25% saying yes. 63% saying no, and then 13% it's part of our plans. It's something we're looking into.
Good. Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, the financial, the chargeback, the total cost of ownership type capabilities is really becoming a big driver within a lot of companies today. So this is good to see this, that we have customers using this functionality. So asset management is part of an ecosystem, and really what I want to show here is that when we're looking at the financial management, the chargeback, understanding total cost of ownership of a business service, and we listened to Mark talk about the business services and how they're structured and how we can roll these costs up. What I'm showing here is that within asset management, we have the ability to bring all this information in. Whether it's IT related or non-IT related, labor type costs, all this comes in, and within asset management, we have the capability of tying all this together so that at the end of the day, we can understand the total cost of ownership of a business service. And then from that point, we can then decide from the chargeback how we want to start charging back the various business units. Just to reemphasize here, AM tracks all the associated costs. So from a cost standpoint, we have acquisitions, we have operational change costs, maintenance, we have different financial periods we got to look at. We've got budgets we've got to track as well. We're able to allocate costs doing, as I mentioned, chargeback or automatic allocation. We can manage the contracts associated with all this. And this gets down into, reconciling the users that are tied against those contracts, the assets, the projects, even to the expiry dates of maintenance and support agreements, leases, so we can trigger notifications when leases come up. So there's a lot of capabilities here that we can track within asset management. What really allows us to bring it all together to address the chargeback subjects within your company. Last here on the list is the ability to track software compliance. So understanding the costs for compliance within your organization, the usage of the software titles, all this can be applied into the understanding of your total cost of ownerships. Beyond cost understanding, we really allow you to show significant savings. Well, certain areas here we have showing is chargeback to end users. We have entitlement management software counters that allow us to really highlight the software investment optimization capabilities that are potential. From this, maybe you may want to reharvest licenses that are underutilized. You may want to restructure how these licenses are deployed. Maybe you want to understand, if I upgrade my hardware, how's that going to impact me as well if I have more cores. Once again, we're bringing all this up to the top. Leasing contracts. We have the ability within the contract module to bring this information in. Financial, we can track the leasing expenses, and we can start triggering on, notifying end users when renewal periods come up, so you avoid any late penalties. And then, of course, asset management goes beyond just being IP related. We are also non-IT, and this could be fixed assets, which could be buildings or other tangible type goods that don't plug into the internet and are really non-IP related devices. So the chargeback engine allows us to, within asset management, allow us to reallocate costs. In the chargeback, we build rules for doing this, and these rules reflect our business organization. And we can trigger these off of events, certain objects, a dollar amount if you want, and they're set up from a a source cost center, and then there would be the chargeback rules would be charged to target cost centers within your organization. Also, along with this, I mentioned earlier, within the financial module capabilities of asset management, we allow you to track expenses. So within here, we have, as you create a chargeback rule and execute on that, what you're going to see is 2 expense lines are created for each chargeback. That would be one crediting the cost center and one debiting a cost center. So overall, what we're allowing you to do here is we're putting a lot of power in your hands so you can manage IT as a real P&L organization. On this slide, I'm showing you an example of the expense lines, which are within the financial module. We see a split list detail view here. So at the top here, we have a list of the various expense lines. Then underneath here, we have the various details of the expenses. So this example, we have the operational expenditures highlighted. And this is showing the various details here. The cost type, which is for IT servers. We have our tax credit information, our credits and debits information here. And we have various tabs along the top here to allow us to, define our allocation, the histories of the expenses, any documentation we want to attach to this, and of course any workflows, because we can associate workflows to this to take any action that we may want to take at any time. So let's look at an example of chargeback rule. So in this example here, we're talking about each time a server is moved, cost center is charged with $400. Anytime a new development software license is received, a charge to IT for 200 here, 20% of its purchase value and 80% to development. So what we're allowing you to do here is allocate costs between different organizations. So this is taking a certain amount and dividing it. And also, we allow you to do a track or create a rule for the access of a business service that will be charged back to the users or the business unit of that user's, say, for $200 per year. That's a good example there. So we're allowing you to take a lot of different scenarios and really configure it to meet the needs of your organization. And on this slide, we're showing how asset management can simulate costs. So what we're looking at here is the results of software counters. And in this particular case, we look at office installations of let's say a software product, and we show the rights. We have entitlements, we have the number of installations, we're showing you the used and then unused installs, and then at the end we can show you the compliance and then the cost for compliance. So if you've overconsumed on your licenses, we can tell you how much it's going to cost to roll that back in. So once again, as we're rolling all this up to the total cost of ownership of a business service, at any time you can start creating events to notify you when the cost of the service is starting to get out of hand. In this particular case, we could be over-consuming on software licenses. But within asset management, we're showing you that we can track all this. We're showing you here that we can display right down to the user's consumptions of those licenses. And we can go into the business unit or the users, whatever you choose to, whatever you want to display on. So from a total cost of ownership, if we look at the calculation, the asset management AQL engine allows us to create these calculations for the total cost of ownership. So this is allowing us to retrieve all the expenses for the asset, right? The acquisition costs, the maintenance costs, operational costs. This could be, you could outsource to a third party to do updates to your servers. So all these costs can be brought in and rolled up to the top. And then also we take into effect the depreciation costs if they need to be applied. We have a couple of examples here. Purchase price on a 4 years for IT assets. You can have yearly maintenance on 1 year. Overall, you can take a lot of these different costs and you can manipulate them within asset management. A yearly total cost of ownership is calculated for the asset, and then this asset yearly total cost of ownership is aggregated to an asset class level. Overall, what we're allowing you to do here is to optimize your IT financial management. So this goes back to the financial management module we polled on earlier, trying to see how many have got this deployed. I believe you see, through the slides here, there's a lot of functionality and a lot of value that we can bring to your organization. We can help you with vendor selection. We can identify the vendors that are meeting certain SLAs. We can help you understand how these vendors are standing up against the maintenance contracts. When you do go for renewal, you can then make these decisions. We can bring to the forefront the cost for forecasting, so you have better understanding as you're going forward with a project, whether or not you're going to exceed costs. And then, of course, the basis for chargeback rules. All this comes in together so that we provide you the capabilities to do chargeback. So today we provide a lot of out-of-the-box integrations with other tools within the IT ecosystem, allowing you to bring all these costs in, whether it's service management, so you understand change costs, ERP systems. We can integrate to supplier catalogs. We have integrations to the UC&B so that we can get the definitions of the business service. So within asset management, we allow you to build out these business services and display them so that you can see, as Mark showed before, all the components that make up your business service. And this could either be done manually, or we can integrate to UC&B, and these could be imported through the integration. We also have integrations to cloud providers, which could be HP Cloud Service Automation, or Cloud System Matrix, or Amazon. And what we do here is we really want to understand the underlying infrastructure, and this comes back to helping us understand the compliance of any software titles that may be on there. So if you're out of compliance, we need to raise this, and of course this could affect your total cost of ownership of the business service. But we're also watching for the consumption and usage of these services within the cloud. So we're able to bring all this information back and tie it together and then display it up so that you have a good picture of what your business service is costing. So as you go to do chargeback, you understand how you should break out the charges to ensure that you're recovering your costs within your organization. So with this, I'd like to ask another question, because on the previous slide I talked about cloud chargeback and our ability to bring these costs in as well. I'd like to ask another question, Mark, if we can.
Sure. So good points, good discussion so far, and I think this question is very timely in our discussion right before the use case. Are you looking to move towards cloud chargeback? Yes, no, and or is it part of our plans? Yeah, I think so far, as this big transition has taken place, all the feature, functionality, capability that you're describing, I think the timeliness of this question is spot on. And it looks like we're getting some feedback here. Just give it another minute.
Yeah. All right.
Couple folks.
Yeah, I'm really starting to see, a change in the industry now with regards to chargeback and the ability to include the cloud services within there. I've talked to customers that are deploying, they have a business service, say for email, and a couple of those components of the email service may be held within their data center, right, which is traditionally provisioned. But other parts of those modules are housed in the cloud. And for example, I have one customer that moves these modules around based on cost. So he's always wanting to understand the cost of his business services. So very key here to be able to bring this information in.
Great, good point. So it looks like we've closed our poll, and looking at the results here, again, to the question of are you looking to move towards cloud chargeback, 43% said yes, 29% said no, and another 29% said it's part of our plans.
Excellent. Excellent. That's good to hear. So hopefully some of the use cases I talk about here are resonating, and they're probably sounding pretty similar to what you're seeing within your own organizations. So let me go through some use case, Mark, and then
Sure.
dive into here. So we've gone, I've talked about the ability to show total cost of ownership, and and here I'm giving you a use case from a human HR service standpoint, where we're bringing in the hardware costs, the licenses, the contracts, the operational costs. So we bring all this in, and we can tie it together, which is great. So this is showing, in this slide here, we're showing how we have our database service connected to the application service, which is connected to the web service, which is connected to the clients, which really builds out the human resources service. And this is pretty similar to what you talked about earlier, Mark. And let me just flip on to the next slide. So if we look at this within the asset management UI here, what we can see is within here, once again, we have the ability to build out the business services. I talked about this earlier. You can import them, do it automatically from using to be, or you can manually type these in. But within here, you have your different business service models. You have the values. You're showing the average yearly TCO for those. And you can see if they're in use or if they're not in use at any given time. Underneath here, we're showing you various information with regards to that service. We have sales support service highlighted here. If you look at the details to this, we can show you, the description of that. We can even assign an asset tag to that. And then, of course, there's a lot of other tabs within here that allow us to really understand the business services from a cost perspective. So what I've done on this screen here is I've jumped over. We're in the same area. We're looking at the same. We're looking at the human resource management software, the SAP. That was part of the original example here. And what I've done is I've clicked over to what's the ROI tab within the detail view. And here you're seeing your average yearly total cost of ownership. We can roll it up, and right now in this particular example, we have a business value of $20,000, and the yearly TCO is $5,800 roughly. And you can see how these details here are set up. You can set up the business value start dates, end dates, the overall business value. And then this is the key here is our chargeback unit price. This is allowing us to determine how we're going to charge back for this service to the end users. So in this particular case, we're looking at $200 per user of this service. So now we're looking at the costs associated to the HR service. And here we're looking at the details of these. So within here, we can see that, on Thursday, March 19th, 2015, we purchased, there was a purchase associated at a cost of $14,582. And then, that same Thursday, we installed this system. So you're starting to see how we can start applying the different costs that are associated to your business service, and we can roll those up to the top. So when you are looking at your business service, you can start to see the true value of what it's costing you. So a human resource manager can build their own price here. It can be, a fixed price, which is really, the yearly total cost of ownership plus some margin divided by the number of users equals the user price. And I showed that back here on this screen where we have our chargeback unit price. So this is where you're inputting this information. Another way that you can build out your price is you can price it based on usage. It is possible. You could say, how much, maybe if it's, $1,000 a year, you can use it X number of times type scenario. So users can, within asset management can also request access to an HR service. This can be done with an asset manager, or it can be done within service management. But I'm just showing you here a lot of the power that we can achieve within asset management to do this chargeback capability. And we can build out various workflows. You can modify these workflows within AM. And users are associated to the services, and they can be tracked. So at any time, you can understand how an end user is consuming a service. So if we were looking at, say, an email service, you understand what that business service is costing you. You understand what you're billing back. But we can also drill down even further to understand how that user is consuming that service to generate the cost, right? Are they, are they just using the service? Have they extended their database size, the repository size for the email service? Have they, requested password resets? Because all this incurs costs, and we can charge all this back to the organization or the business unit, the user, and then the business unit that user is associated with. So we're just showing you here an example of the workflow and how you can build these out to take into account a lot of these use cases. Once again, just to reemphasize that the chargeback rule is set on its monthly basis. It can be set to charge a user's cost center for that HR service. And also a fixed cost amount can also be calculated as well too. So if we look at the details of a chargeback rule, this slide is showing you a good image of the chargeback system and how we can set this up. We can, there's events. We can have it, timers. We can have enable, disable the rules here. We have how to calculate the amount. So we have various ways that we can apply this in here. We can set up the cost type. So a lot of capability, a lot of flexibility once again on our capabilities within asset management for this chargeback. This is going into a little bit more details just to show how we can start applying SLAs to the cost. So maybe if you're not getting the service isn't meeting your SLA, this will definitely could impact the chargeback, right? So all this can be taken into account, and what we're showing in this screen here is under the context. You can see the service level target lines, and then down here within the amount calculation for this chargeback, we can start defining what the penalty will be if you're not meeting a certain SLA. So overall, there's a lot of value to asset management. And in this webinar, we focused in on the financial module. But if you remember back to my first slide I started with, there was many other modules. There was the chargeback, there was software asset management, there's the procurement, there's the contract module. But overall, if we're just looking at the the financial module, lots of value here. We're allowing you to capture costs in a highly automated way. Lots of integrations. I showed that earlier as well. We're allowing you to reallocate when the need for costs. You can reallocate this in an automatically. You can aggregate costs so you can understand the total cost of ownership of a business service. You can understand and you can capture the links to users, locations, cost centers, budgets, categories. You can bring all this in together, and you can keep all these links updated through the whole asset life cycle. So at the end, asset management is really preparing and automating all the financial analysis angles that you require as you move forward with these type of use cases. A lot of costs that coming from asset management, from an asset standpoint, we're allowing you to individually, you can track assets by barcode, categorization, the purchase costs with the vendors. You can track the initial purchase costs, the leasing rents, the maintenance, yearly rents. So there's a lot of costs that we can bring in through asset management. We talked about penalties, and then of course, as we've mentioned many times throughout the webinar here, is that we're able to bring all this data up into one bucket so that you understand the cost of the business service, and you're able to charge back the end users appropriately. So Mark, with that, we've hit the conclusion of my slides, and I know we've got a few slides to go here, and I'll turn it back to you to continue.
Okay, well, if you have a minute, we still have a little bit of time. We've got a couple of questions in the queue. If you have a question, feel free to click on the question button and type it in. In the meantime, we did get a couple of questions that I wanted to run by you and see if we can spark some more. All right. So first of all, great presentation. Really liked the use case. Really liked how it's more than just bringing data together, in one common place. You're actually enriching that data and connecting the data points, and it kind of parlays perfectly with this question here that says, after gathering all the data into Asset Manager, is it possible to provide kind of this real-time visibility? And if so, can you also provide it in a granular level that can be aggregated amongst, management?
Yes, definitely you can do this. And in fact, with Asset Management 9.50, we have the widget concepts, and there is widgets that show, your business services and the costs, and you can click on those business services, and you can drive into seeing, the details of that, and even to the chargebacks, right? And then from there, you can click on the chargebacks, and that goes into the details of the business units that are being charged back. Click on a business unit that can drill you down into the actual users, and so you can see how you can view all this from a central cost perspective, and you could allocate that view to maybe your financial management team, your CFO, or whoever within your company. They can see that from a high level, but at the same time, you have that ability to drive down into that richness of data that is really showing you, the granular data that you need to make those business decisions.
Good point. So what you're saying is there's a dashboard that's available here in the next to the current release.
That's correct. Yes. Yeah.
Great. Okay, and then just kind of a follow-up question to that one is, and again, we're starting to get a couple of questions in the queue, and if you have more questions, please add them in. We'd we'd like to address them. So, how would you characterize the difference, if any, between showback versus chargeback? This is one of those industry illuminating questions. What's your approach to that? Chargeback versus showback?
Wow. You know, so what we're seeing right now within the industry is, you know, more of the chargeback. We haven't seen too much showback requirements lately, but you know, chargeback is really becoming a key topic, and the ability to you know, aggregate all the costs and be able to understand, you know, once again, the total cost and charge back accordingly, right? Some companies, you know, you're not allowed to make a profit when you're, you know, you're running your service, right? So chargeback is definitely within the industry right now. We see this a lot more often than the showback.
Got it. So showback would typically be you produce a report, someone sees what their cost could be if they were to be charged, and then chargeback would be maybe some sort of integration to a system that, you know, takes that money out. Okay.
That's right. Yeah, produces an invoice and the money's just transferring hands. That's correct.
Got it. And typically, from your experience, do you see customers starting out with the showback so that they can kind of prepare, make awareness, let them know that, you know, these servers, this software is in your control and your responsibility? Give them a chance to clean that up?
Yeah, you know, that is a good practice to start out with showback. You know, a lot of the customers I've talked to have really just jumped to the chargeback, but yeah, you know, being able to do that showback initially and provide those, you know, your users the ability to make adjustments before you start charging them for the service is definitely key.
Got it. And then with this capability, do we have either plans, or is it in the software today to do some sort of forecasting now that we understand the run rates?
It is, yeah. So, you know, we have some abilities within AM today to do like a trend, or you can understand, you know, the trend and where you're going, right? But we are also looking at doing forecasting. So this is to, you know, really gets down to cost optimization, right? And as we move forward with the product, you know, we're looking to bring in more big data type capabilities to allow us to really showcase, you know, the data that we have within asset management and allow you to do this type of forecasting.
Great, great. And then it looks like one final question here. You talked a little bit about software compliance and the ability to kind of show some usability. Is there an impact when someone has a VM, they have some critical software on there, and they decide to replicate that VM? Is there an impact on cost? Should customers be concerned about that?
Oh, definitely. Yes. And I mean, that's a key, you know, another great feature that asset management brings, right? And I mean, here, we understand the underlying infrastructure of that virtual instance, right? We understand how many cores are associated, et cetera. And especially if you're looking at like an ESX server and you have the virtual instance on that, and you replicate that to a different ESX server that could have twice as many cores underneath it. Big impact here. I mean, that significantly impacts your licensing compliance position. The great news here is as you bring this information in from the, you know, the inventory of the hardware and, you know, the software, we're able to identify this because we also have your entitlement information. So we know what you're entitled to, and we have the ability to run license rules against this. So as you're starting to move these software titles around or your software installations around, we can instantly tell you whether, hey, look, you know what, you've just moved this to a, you know, a scenario that's going to greatly increase your license compliance position here. You're going to be, you know, you're going to have a significant invoice at the end of the day, right? So yeah, identifying these risks and letting you know ahead of time, you know, we can set up AM to with some workflow to alert you if you run into these situations, so that you can then jump in and take corrective action. Either you acknowledge that, yeah, we're going to live with this additional cost, and you adjust your budgets and everything, or you take the corrective action and move it back to how it was originally provisioned.
Great, great. Well, it looks like we're getting close to the top of the hour. Thank you, Mike. Great Q&A session. Thank you all for the questions. And if we didn't get to your question, we'll send you an email with a response and then collect it together as part of the replay of this. If we could go ahead, and I've got some resources. If you enjoyed this discussion, we have a couple more webinars lined up here coming up. One is on showcasing the flexibility of HP CMS Configuration Management System Developer Framework. We also have software asset management with HP Asset Manager and Universal Discovery integration. Great discussion there. And then bringing together for security compliance. You seem to be Asset Manager coupled with security to see how we can bring those silos closer together. We've collected some great information. Security is a big, big concern, and helping customers take advantage of the tools that they have and bring them to those together. So these webinars are available coming up, and we have those both on our HP software, it's in our blogs, as well as hopefully you're receiving some emails. And we also want to invite you to HP Discover, which is coming up here. We have a very special link, so our Vivid members can get a discount if they use this link. And then there's a number of breakout sessions that will be hosted at HP Discover in London. So hope to see you there. And then I think we have one last resources that you can use to help in your journey. In this case here, these are resources to help you get approval to go to HP Discover. So there's 10 reasons to go. And of course, the proverbial email template so that you can start out with some good verbiage to get approval. And that concludes. Thank you very much. Hopefully there'll be a short survey that'll pop up on your screen there. And we'd like to thank our friends at Vivid for hosting us and providing a great platform for us to share the news. Also, social media, HP Discover, CMS. I'd like to thank Mike, Vivid, all of our friends at HP Software, and you, our customers. This concludes our session, and thank you again for joining us.